Hello. Today we're discussing the complex topic of being a baby mama or baby daddy versus a husband or wife. So, I don't know if most people who are old enough to say that they were born in the 80s and before are watching, but if you were born in the 80s and prior years, then you were allowed to witness and take notice and observe the type of disrespect that began to formulate for women, and in particularly African American women, as far as derogatory names which were put into sync in large amounts. So using like mass media, and say for instance the songs, the t-shirts, videos and stuff like that, defaming and women's character, and also teaching younger generations visually, intellectually, that it's acceptable to see women depicted in this manner. So a lot of these words and stuff like that were made up for women since the 80s and just kind of like went out of control, was just like they didn't even exist for women before the 80s. There were a few choice names that women were called, who were deemed to have a suspect type of character about themselves, or not have respect for themselves. But one of the things that happened was there was a stigma that came about. And there was a stigma that came about for these men and these women, a lot of whom were not taught and not talked to about the pros and cons, or the consequences of not getting married and coming together as a union spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually. So for women who had children who were not married became statistics. And they became statistics in society's eyes. They became trifling. To have more than one kid's father, they became welfare victims. Many of them dropped out of high school and never returned to finish their school, nor were they encouraged, a lot of them, to continue their education, because they weren't taught why it's important for them to strive to do better than the generation before them. And many times a lot of our females, our women, got trapped up in the welfare system, and they stayed right on the welfare system, in fact, and couldn't see a way out. So they began to work with the welfare system and trapping themselves eventually, by finding ways around getting a job, finding ways around earning money legally, but instead, making their schedule and their life fit around the money that they receive on a monthly basis. A lot of these women became isolated, or they began to find that people didn't want to invest time or energy into their lives anymore, to discuss topics, to hold them accountable for their actions and what they're going through, and to really have that person in life to talk to you and shake you up some and say, you know what? I've been down that road before. I've been down that road before of dropping out of school, of having some slick talking guy talk to me and tell me some stuff he thinks that I want to hear. I've been down that road before of becoming pregnant and thinking that I'm ready to raise a child, to be responsible for shaping a life, creativity by myself if I had to. And I can tell you that that's a dead end street. Because not only is it cheating the woman and the child out of fully experiencing what it is to cohabitate, build, create, and protect together their life and their foundation, but it cheats the man out of his role as being a man. And this is the disconnect that we are not talking about to each other and on a regular basis. It's almost as if we've decided that we would separate society right down the middle. And just as there's a society that exists that are rich and poor, there's a society that exists that is deemed not deserving of having truth and honesty and honor and dignity and all of the glory that comes along with that. As opposed to a different society of life, which says that, you know, you can have this glory and you can have this dignity and you can have this self-respect. You just, you know, don't teach other people what you know. Keep that for yourself. Now, in terms of karma and how we feel, eventually we have to say to ourselves, where do we draw the line with this? Would we feel comfortable? Would we feel honored and dignified and respected if we had been treated that way? As opposed to how the women were treated, men were treated and labeled as deadbeats, as men who just were disrespectful, trifling, throwaways in society. And in fact, they were part of a controlled versus uncontrolled group, where the controlled group were generally men who finished their education, who worked jobs, who became married and stayed and raised their children. The uncontrolled group of men generally dropped out of school, stayed unemployed for long periods of time, and refused to get married and stick around and raise their children. So then the question comes to say, you know, should we blame the system at play? Should we blame the government? Should we blame our families? You know, for the lack of information and the continual vicious cycles of these types of roles that are occurring for society that continue to get worse and worse and worse every generation. So one of the things that I've noticed in life is that there are certain perks that married couples enjoy. And, you know, they enjoy these perks through spirituality. And so I'm not going to say that, you know, marriage couples just outrightly refuse to inform and educate single people about what they're really missing, about the perks they're missing being married. I wouldn't be the first to say that marriage couples, you know, they come with the drama and say, oh my goodness, oh, you just don't know how marriage is, and it's draining and it's always down. And but then, you know, when they're having a good time in marriage, you don't really see them, you don't really hear from them, and they don't really share the joy and the bliss and the happiness, the deepening and bonds and the learning that they share together as a married couple with their single friends. So one of the the things that happens is that it becomes more of a humorous topic when we talk about women who are considered baby mamas instead of a wife, or women who are considered sideline chicks and throwback chicks, or mistress. And I suspect that there's a bit of humor that goes along with it, either because the people who are laughing about these individuals probably figure that this will never be their lives. They would never become the statistic in that manner. Or they're laughing to stop from crying and getting upset and distraught at how these innocent lives, in some ways, are consistently being destroyed. So, with these derogatory names and these labels and these sections that people are being put into and divided, and society says, is forget all about the strong women and men who knew their roles outrightly and what was expected of them. Forget about those people, because you'll never be like those people. You're not going to be the type of woman who stands up for herself and has the audacity to sit in the car, on the passenger side of the car, for 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes until the guy that she drove up to this place with gets out of the car and has sense enough to put his hand on the doorknob and open the door handle and let her out of the car like a respected woman. And then you have women who say, this man is old enough to know at this stage in his life, this age in his life, he's old enough to know what respecting a woman is and means. And if he has the audacity to spend time out of his life wooing a woman he has no respect for, then is it time for him to get in touch with himself and ask himself, why is he willing to throw away so much time in his life and somebody else's for somebody he's not willing to be serious about or with? Now, we can attribute a lot of this from grandparents passing away early, untimely deaths, from blended or not blended families, but broken homes and families being broken apart, relationships being destroyed and broken apart. And so what that does is it puts more of the responsibility on the single parent, who now has countless jobs that they need to do to make sure that they're compensating for the loss of their partner in their relationship, in their household. And so, defining to society, who seems to be very, very judgmental about some of these types of people who are living these lifestyles, without truly knowing what led the persons to live in those types of lifestyles in the first place, has become very, very important as our next generations are growing up very, very fast. And they are watching what the older people are doing and how they are handling their business. They are watching how grown people are able to decipher what the problem is and resolve the problem. In today's society, a lot of us live in denial about the state of our own minds, our own relationships, our own households. And quite frankly, we have become afraid to run a check on ourselves to find out whether we're overstepping our boundaries as people or not. So, one of my concerns about this is if people can openly talk about gossip and slander, and that's funny to people, then, is it safe to say that if people are looking for balance in life, then balance in life comes with using your logic and saying, well, these statistics happened in life. So we, knowing that these statistics happened in life, we know that there's something that can be done to stop from these statistics happening in life. It's just not, let's sit back and let these statistics happen, and let's let these statistics happen to a certain amount of people, a certain portion of people, because we either don't like these people, or these people are expendable to us based on a list of determinants such as being poor, being disabled, undereducated. So these are some of the topics that we are not discussing, and tying into spirituality and how that fits into spirituality, because if Genesis says that a man is not said to reside by himself for too long, and this is the reason that his companion Eve was created from him. That says that Jehovah God said that there was a problem. He could foresee that there was going to be a problem if man stayed by himself for too long. Now, it doesn't go into detail to say if the man was by himself too long, what he would actually do. Would it be intellectual? Would he break down intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? Because of those lacks of connections and bonds in his life, and not having his partner there. So therefore, this is where some of the respect begins to get blurred out there, or begins to become blurred out, is because of not talking about how we are judged in society. And we are judged by society. We are judged by our family and our peers. We are judged by the judicial system. We are judged by the spiritual system. And so with all of these snap-minute judgments coming from all of these different places and people, this stands to make life already difficult and complicated. And so much so that we need to, we really need to become vigilant and discussing and talking openly with each other, some of our experiences in life. And in order to do that, we must get to a point of intellectual, emotional, and spiritual maturity. And in terms of, if we think about everybody being born into this world in sin because of the trials and tribulations of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, then we know that no one we lay eyes on today is perfect in every way. Nor are they faultless or sinless. So with this, we can begin to, with this knowledge and education, this wisdom, we can begin to become compassionate for people who are dealing with struggles and strifes. Rather, we have gone through those struggles and strifes ourselves. If we are to love our neighbor the way we love ourselves, then, if our neighbor is struggling, let us have a kind word sometimes for our neighbor. If our neighbor is hungry, let us feed our neighbor sometimes. And sometimes, quite frankly, your neighbor's going to make you angry. Sometimes they just, you have disagreements. And it's because we are born with emotions. But what we're not born with is a guideline and a book that tells us how to deal with our emotions. How to delegate and say, this is the emotion I'm having today. I don't know quite why I'm having this emotion at this particular time, but Right now, I feel anxious. And I feel afraid, and I don't know why. But first, coming out of denial and acknowledging that you're feeling something. Once you've come out of denial and acknowledge that you're actually experiencing or feeling that emotion, name it. What type of emotion did you feel or experience? What's happening in your environment that may have caused that emotion or experience of that emotion to happen? Is it an emotion that you would like to experience again? Or is it an emotion that you can deal without? How long did the emotion last? Was it someone around you who triggered that emotion to happen? And once we began to deal with, our different selves, our superego, our ego, and ourself, our environment, our social environment, including our peers, our spiritual environment, our intellectual environment, our physical environment. And we begin to understand what our need actually is. What can we survive on at the minimum? And therefore we can start to separate our wants from our need. So you know what? I got this dress I just bought, and those red bottoms would go perfect with this dress I just bought. Now, if I had a lot of money to work with, that wouldn't even probably be a consideration or thought other than just to fancy myself and weigh my pros and cons. However, if I'm on a budget, and I know I'm on a budget, I'm wistfully thinking. Reality steps in and says, you know your budget. You know how much income financially you work with. You know that you can't eat those red bottom shoes. You can't sleep in those red bottom shoes. And you can talk to those red bottom shoes, but they might not talk back to you verbally. So no offense against red bottom shoes. They some bad shoes, especially the stilettos. But when it comes to need, you need what the Maslow hierarchy pyramid says, and that is love, food, water, and of course clothing today. If we were in the Garden of Eden, to wear clothing would be an abomination. But because we have judicial laws now, we would get arrested for indecent exposure in a public place if we walked around in a public street unclothed. So that's just one experience or relevant example as to say, the differences that we experience today as opposed to what the expectations were previously. So understanding that, making a poor decision in life, and let's say a young couple made a poor decision in life where they actually came together and created life together. Understanding and coming out of denial about what they actually did together. Mutually taking respect and mutually taking responsibility for the decisions that they made. And working together to create the best foundation for the children they made together would be the most honorable, respectful, upstanding way to show that not only did the couple mature and take responsibility for the decisions that they made, but look how far they have come, and they were willing to put aside their childish ways. So a lot of times, anger, embarrassment, and frustration, really, just human emotion and error, makes us get angry to the point where we call each other out of our names. And, that's where the deadbeat daddy and trifling baby mama and, all of this stuff starts to come against us. We have this energy of negativity, and we just can't stand each other at times. And what we really truly have not been able to say is to each other is, I feel disrespected. I feel like you hurt me and dishonored me in ways I never expected would happen. And though I take responsibility for my portion of my actions then, I have not heard you verbally take responsibility for your actions. And so, learning to mature past beyond our emotions, and saying, you know what, at one time I was younger, and with my friends, boy, we would talk about people so bad. Oh, don't you come around here with that, thinking you're going to get over on somebody and run game. Because we're going to talk about you so bad, you're not going to ever think about doing that again. And then there comes a point in life where we must decide what's worth us adding our energy, our time, our experience to. Sort of like picking our battles. And so even, though we may remember that we at one time loved each other as much as we could possibly love each other at that time, with the intellectual, spiritual, and emotional maturity that we had at the time. But yes, you too must have boundaries set against you in order for us to mature and keep the respect and dignity we have left with each other. And yes, you too must endure rejection and the word no when it comes down to it. Yes, I too must have the strength and the courage to say no to you when I need to. And yes, I must deal with rejection, of now dealing with a person who may or may not hold hostile, angry feelings for me because of what we've gone through in the past. But continuing to live life as if nothing ever happened really just doesn't do anybody justice at all. And so at some point, we have to become honest with ourselves, and, rather we think back on a scenario and have a personal laugh to ourselves about where we were at that time in life, or if we think back on that time period and it budges a place of anger we didn't know existed in us. We have to allow ourselves to know that something is unfinished there. There is a reason, the relationship keeps funneling into the person's mind. There's a reason why the people did not come together, did not stay together. There's a reason. How much of what's unknown, though, to these people, these baby mamas and baby daddies, is going to affect these children down the road? And that's the biggest portion of it. You see so many children growing up today, and it's horrifying. Like as a parent, you know that you would like your children to experience what life is. However, according to psychological or psychology books, they teach us that children grow in stages. So what a child learns when they're 1 year old is not the same as what they learn when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 13, 18. And when we really think about the time period that we went through before, if we reflect on that, though it might have seemed like it was of great importance to hurry up and get this done and hurry up and get that done, let about 3 to 5 years go by and look back at that time period, and you'll say to yourself, it just wasn't that serious. There were so many other things that could have been done, activities, barbecues, dinners, going to the park, spending the time together, laughing with each other, bonding, just connecting. And that brings back into play where our perspective and priorities are in life. And see, the imperfect part of us wants to blame the other person involved automatically. Because quite frankly, it's tough to sit on the hot seat. It's tough to be open and honest when you look like a dumb ass. When you come across in life looking like a disaster, nothing more than a train wreck, because of the dumb decisions that you have made throughout life, it's quite difficult to face people and admit that you are a dumbass and have been a dumbass making stupid decisions. And that somehow now you expect people to view you in a different way. However, getting over that hump of fear is but the first step. Because unfortunately, in order to become an adult, we had to travel through childhood. So, traveling through childhood means that we made some mistakes along the way. And there are many parents today dealing with enormous amounts of guilt because of the decisions that they've made over the years. So much so that they forget about that unconditional love sometimes that their children hold for them. And so I would just say, instead of taking advantage of that unconditional love that children hold for the adults they feel they can trust, show them why having that unconditional love for you isn't a mistake. Teach them that no, not every person can be trusted. Teach them why you can't be trusted sometimes. And why we can't trust and rely on ourselves. But also show them what the difference is of you being a parent that cares about the responsibility that you have towards your children. Means that come hell or high water, 5, 10, 15, 35 years, a person never forgets having children. And that they have a responsibility to their children. Transparency. And allowing your children to know that you are not a perfect person, nor do you expect them to be a perfect person. But you do expect them to know how to